Hello everyone and welcome along to your Sunday night edition of the TII podcast. My name is Craig Dennett and I'm joined by just one contributor tonight. Sky Broadband has got the better of another one. So I'm just joined by the one tonight, and that is the fantastic John Walker. How are you doing, John?
Aye, not bad, mate. I think they'd seen the tweet that was sent out in response to our podcast and thought, what's the point in even coming on, mate? Everything's been covered.
Aye. Please don't go look at Twitter until after the podcast if you want to see what some people's views are. But yes, we've got absolutely loads to get stuck into. I've seen the title, should Rangers build the midfield around Connor Barron? A lot of people already saying yes, and that seems to be the end of what they say. We'll try and delve a bit deeper into the reasons why some of us think that and why some people don't, and where the other parts fit. Obviously, Mohamed Diomande is a huge player for Rangers as well. We'll look a bit at the game yesterday against Motherwell, the good bits and the bad bits, and we'll talk a bit about going forward in Dynamo Kyiv on Tuesday night as well as we get ready for that second leg. But John, just to get us started, what are your reflections on the game yesterday?
Very much an early
excited before you even start.
just an early season game. Like, if you took the first half and second half as separate things, you'd be like, those don't belong in the same game together. Rangers looked very good in the first half. I think if it hadn't been for the own goal and we kept the momentum and we'd have got a 2 or 3 goal lead, you might have seen a second half that would have flown in 4, 5, 6. But it just seemed the second half, everyone just seemed completely zapped. And I think that is going to be an issue with pre-season, especially so many players that he talked a little bit about pre-season, about really trying to get minutes in people's legs. People that he probably over-abused, like Tom Lawrence, Dessers, did for the first time look really, really done in. I know he's been very protective of Barron and Diomande so far. Sterling coming back from injury. I think it's just those dips. Tavernier missed most of pre-season. It's all these little contributions. Pröpper's just came in. Černy's not had a pre-season. The dips expected, but it was just such a drop off. Yeah, such disparity between the first 55 to the next 35.
Yeah, it really was. It was really disheartening as well, because I really enjoyed the first 55 minutes or so of that game, and then it just fell off a cliff, and it gradually seemed to get worse and worse as Leon Balogun then came on and had an absolute nightmare of a game, and it just went from there. But we'll get stuck into all of those bits. But first of all, obviously, it was the Rangers' first home game at Hampden. I saw lots of confused faces, people trying to find the gates and where their seat was and all that sort of stuff. How was your seat at Hampden, John?
I mean, Hampden's not been turned round. Like, Hampden's the same thing it's always been, and the stands are the same, and the number. At Barron, maybe like a couple of gates that seem to cross over, and like I know P and Q as you go around, kind of there's different entrances you can use. Apart from that, I feel like Hampden's quite normal, but maybe that's because I go to Scotland games and always go to the semi-finals and finals and maybe just used to it. But no, I didn't. I think it's just people, if they're used to going, if you maybe only go to Ibrox and you're used to your seat all the time and you've been at that seat for 10, 15 years, then maybe yes, going to Hampden would be a pain in the backside. I mean, Hampden's terrible as a venue, as a football stadium, as a stadium in general. But I don't think finding your seat should have been a talking point, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it's I only asked it because I was surprised by how many people were struggling, and it's the first time I've ever seen, you know how you have those physical maps of stadiums outside so people can know where sections are. There was crowded. They were all absolutely crowded with people trying to pinpoint where their seat was and stuff like. That confused me massively. My seat, normally in the club deck, I was row triple D behind the goal, so I was at the furthest away point you could possibly be behind the goal, which I know Rangers said that they were they kind of mapped it so people were as close as they could be to where their seat was. That is definitely not anywhere near where my seat was. And then Kyle had it even worse, I think. Kyle was row B behind the goal, so he couldn't see a thing. Apart from Černy's goal, we got a great view of Černy's goal.
I think one of the things you need to be mindful of is Hampden's one tier for 3/4 of the stadium, and Ibrox is 3 and 2 all the way around. So to have the same view is almost impossible. I'm quite lucky. My Govan rear seat is North Stand. It's very similar height and rows as it can be. But even to that, like me, my brother and my mate all sit together, 3 in a row with friends and family. And it's 2 of us in one row and me behind. So it's like seat 20 and 19 in one row and then 19 in the row behind. So even that, you're like, why can't you just get free together? And you're like, no, we wanted to keep you. So, yeah, it's just not an ideal scenario at all, but it is what it is.
Aye, and I think we'll be putting up with it till about the end of October, it seems. So at least we'll better get used to it. But yeah, back to the game itself. What did you make of Robin Pröpper's debut, John? I thought he, to me, he exuded confidence and calmness in a way that I've not seen it from any of our defenders. What feels like at least a season, if not longer than that. And he just seemed calm on the ball, composed. Fair enough, he scored the own goal, but I thought he brought a real positivity, I think, to our defence where it wasn't really there before.
Yeah, I think all those words that you just said there. I think playing as a footballing centre half for a team last year that finished third, but were never really a team that other teams overly respected. So it would have been used to probably more pressure on the ball than he got yesterday. Very comfortable to come out with the ball. Probably, I mean, he shouldn't be amazed. They should have watched Rangers and know the deal in Scottish football. But he was probably a little bit amazed at how much time he was able to settle into the game. The own goal apart, it hits Suter before it hits him. He's moving, he can't see the ball. It's just a fluke of an own goal. But everything else, I liked the way he stepped on a lot of the times in front of the line of Suter. Was quite happy to match up with Barron's line and leave Suter as the only sweeper behind him, and really be aggressive all the time on the front foot. And that was something that I had noticed in little clips of him before, was that for all he's lacking in pace, I was quite keen to see how confident he was with just being like, I'm 70 yards up the pitch. Like, I'm comfortable pressing in here, knowing that I'm keeping pressure on, and that what we're probably going to do is turn the ball over and get possession again. So I really liked that. I liked kind of the dirty side a wee bit as well, diving into, obviously maybe not the 125 yards for goal, but there was a few higher up the pitch.
I thought that was a good tackle, that one, from where I was sitting. It's hard to tell, obviously, the fine margins of does he hit the guy's ankle first before he hits the ball or whatever, but it looked like a good tackle.
I rewatched the game this morning. It looked like a foul to me. It's just something that I wouldn't necessarily want him diving in so close to go, that one. But there was one on the halfway line that was kind of similar that I really liked because he had to go for it and he did and won the ball. But no, I'm really confident with him. I've said this a few times. He is going to. There's going to be one clip at some point this season, probably chasing Kyogo, where he's going to look really, really slow. And I was used to them as an Arsenal fan with like Mertesacker clips all the time. But he'll very rarely get caught in those positions. Yeah. He'll be like David Weir. He seems very positionally aware. I was. Don't get me wrong. The context and caveat to all this was it was against a Motherwell side that looked like they're really going to struggle this year, as far as I'm concerned. So that would always be the context and caveat I'd put on the praise of a centre half when he wasn't really challenged.
I would remember that context and caveat when we come on to discuss the last 35 minutes of the game. But a couple of comments about Pröpper's performance. CGM55 says Pröpper was okay. He tired badly, but he will get better. RFC72 said he was being a bit over-aggressive at times, but I think that was just because it was his debut. But it was good to see him press up and snap into tackles and win the ball. Paul McGorrigle says his awareness was good. I think what and I don't know if it's just because we've been starved a bit of central defensive quality, but I think one of the things that impressed me was he wasn't only winning the ball, he was finding our players when he won the ball. There was one particular one where he went out really wide to the touchline. I think it was towards the end of the first half. He went really wide to the touchline. Won the header, but just nodded it softly down to Ridvan. And I thought that was one thing that was really impressive to me, was how much he wasn't only being aggressive and winning the ball, it was how much control he had over it once he won it as well.
I think it's what he was saying. The awareness will be really impressive. This is a guy who will be used to trying to keep the possession and pressure on, because that was the way they played last year. I think we'll see loads of that. It's not just going to be clearing the ball, winning tackles. It is going to be about how we continue the attack. I think there was a couple of clips as well. I think even for our goal, there's a moment where he could play it into Tavernier earlier, into the centre. But again, I don't know if that's just kind of context or maybe too early in the game. It was only the 13th minute of his debut. He's probably still trying to settle a little bit. But yeah, I'm very hopeful as it stands just now.
Yeah. I am too. We've got to cling on to hope when it arrives. Another piece of hope that I'm clinging on to was Vaclav Cerny, and how impressive I thought he was from the start yesterday, and in particular, two parts actually. Firstly, his goal, which was a really impressive strike, which I think Tom, the commentator, didn't quite manage to get across in his commentary from the clips that I've seen. But I think also his ability to have that link-up play, not only with James Tavernier, but with the likes of Diomande and Barron as well, when they were coming across, the little touches and the little passes in the tight areas, he wasn't scared of anything. They were all really well weighted passes, and it helped us have that bit of creativity in areas, I think, John, that we tend to struggle around the edge of the box and when they're surrounded by defenders.
I think that's the key thing here. There's a multitude of things happening. We have, and I mean this with as much respect as I can, we have been used to seeing Scott Wright play right wing for us, or Rabbi Matondo play on the line. These are players who have levels of quality, inconsistent as they are. Černý looks like somebody who you'll get 7 out of 10 actions out of that are really impressive, or they'll be positive at least. There'll be a cross into a good area. There'll be the through balls that you've seen for the Scott Wright chance. His goal, one of his crosses just before the second goal. Just little things where you're going, yep, that's what I'm used to. That's what we need to see, is we need to see somebody who has 7 out of 10 actions correctly done. Whereas Scott Wright and Matondo are the complete flip side, as you'll get 2 or 3 out of the 10 and you start to go, oh, Scott Wright's just missing the final ball, or Rabbi Matondo's just missing that close control. I think Černy's kind of got everything, and it'll just be getting him up to match speed, getting him the ball in good positions, and just kind of letting him do what he needs to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's definitely the case. In terms of what else that happened in the game, I think what interested me was the reaction of the crowd to Cyril Dessers. Not only when he scored the goal, obviously, but also when his name was read out in the team sheet. There seems to be a real shift, John, in terms of how people are viewing Cyril Dessers this season, and more. Obviously, it helps if you score a last-minute equaliser away to Dynamo Kyiv, but there seems a real shift in terms of people seeing the positives that he brings rather than the stuff he doesn't.
The thing with Cyril Dessers is, and I'm even guilty of it as well, Cyril Dessers is not a terrible footballer. Cyril Dessers is very clearly a very likeable human being, which goes in everyone's favour. When you see good clips of him on social media, that will definitely help him. His interviews, he never says a bad word about anyone. Even at that, he's kind of almost humorous in knowing the dogs abuse he gets off people like myself, other fans. And I quite like that, because I would always be that way inclined. That if I was in a position of people are there to shoot me down, I'd be comfortable taking it all the time. And that's what I really like about him, is I think he understands where our frustration comes from, because he knows he isn't taking all the chances that we expect him to. But he also is looking at it from a point of view that he's never been a striker that scored 25 plus goals. And he's now in a situation where he probably should be hitting those numbers and should be probably hitting 30. I think if Dessers gets in a run of scoring and continually scoring, and as I keep saying, adding critical goals like the Kyiv equaliser, like the Old Firm that's coming up at the end of the month, these are the ones that are going to really turn it for him being almost like a kind of doubling down protective cheering. Yeah, it's going to then be if people like me going, right, that's fine, he's ticked off the one thing I said, the one thing I was critical of was he's not scoring in big games, and that's what it's costing us. If he starts doing that, people like me don't have a leg to stand on, and we have to shut up and almost like accept that we were wrong, and that's it for me. Like that Kyiv goal, like when I seen that go in, there is that element of like, I really hope it's Dessers. I really hope it's Dessers, because I'm a loudmouth, annoying Rangers fan, but I am not married to any of my opinions on Rangers. If Cyril Dessers ends up scoring 25, 30 goals and scoring against Celtic and scoring in European games critical goals, I'm happy to be wrong.
I think he did that last season, didn't he? He got his goal against Celtic, and the Real Betis goal was his goal of the season, wasn't it? And he did score. It's just the last season, everyone was getting frustrated at the chances he was missing, and they felt like they were costing us in not only big games, but in games, I guess, towards the end of the season where we really needed to. The one that springs to mind is the one at Dundee, but where we really needed to or was it Ross County? Sorry, it was Ross County who could have went 2-0 up, but ended up losing. But that's the one that springs to mind and what sticks in people's memories. But he scored in big games, but he misses a lot of chances too. And I think people are coming round to that way of thinking.
Yeah, I don't want to turn it into Cyril Dessers show, but when I'm talking about big game, I'm talking about the Celtic game at Parkhead. Let's be clear. I'm not just talking about Celtic game in general. I'm talking about the biggest one of them all. But yeah, I think everyone because he is so likeable, myself included. Like, I would love him to make me eat all my words, eat every slice of humble pie. I want that to be the case. I don't want to sit here and I don't enjoy bad mouthing or slating or having a go at any Rangers player, but like, if it happens and it's there and I'm going to have to comment on it, and we're doing these podcasts as reactionary, you're going to say some shit.
Yeah, you absolutely are, and we all have done it as well, and we've all had the abuse for the random stuff we've said as well. The one area I guess that we've picked out at the start, and it's the title of the podcast, focuses around the midfield and Connor Barron's role in that. John, I really want to focus in on that midfield. Firstly, what did you make of Connor Barron's performance yesterday?
It's exactly what I expected Connor Barron to be like in a Rangers shirt. I don't proclaim to know anything more than other people about football, but I think there are sometimes you see a player and you go, he doesn't really have a massive weakness in an Aberdeen side, except he doesn't see the ball as often as I think he'd be good at. And it was the same way I felt when I watched Ryan Jack at Aberdeen. I was always like, he's a really good footballer. Mm-hmm. See if you gave him the ball in a team that tends to dominate. I wonder what he'd be like, because his technical ability's there. He's tackling, he's hungry. That stuff doesn't stop. And it's actually like a really good advert. When we look at our B team and the problems that we seem to have graduating players into the B team, a lot of these players, Bailey Rice is an exception because we took him from Motherwell, but a lot of these players have come through a comfortable Rangers academy where everything's almost provided for them and laid on a plate. Now, I know Aberdeen's academy is brilliant, but you're still breaking into Aberdeen's team. So you're still breaking into the next level of Scottish football, Premier League teams. When you come from that with the grounding they've got, because even when you break into Aberdeen's team, you need to go play Rangers and Celtic and be hungry and be at it all the time. You cannot be anything less than perfect. The minimum requirement is work ethic. Whereas when Rangers, it's maybe like, are you good in the ball? How are you technically? Can you create chances? And when you get to looking at deep, like people like Alex Lowry, you're like, does Alex Lowry lack that real hunger and desire to work hard to be a Rangers player? Yeah. Connor Barron's got that grounding. So then you're just going, do you have a technical ability? Connor Barron's come through a Scottish Premier League academy and been at Scotland under 21s all the time. So I think there's like a real advert for when you take people from other SPFL teams, they've got a way better grounding and work ethic, hunger, desire, and are willing to kind of not die, but they seem like they're more willing to put themselves in front of everything, because it's like, oh my God, I don't want to be disrespectful, but I could be at Aberdeen now fighting for third, fourth or fifth place, but I'm at Rangers where I might actually win trophies and play in Europe. It's like a total, and I feel like Connor Barron is just taking all the good elements that Aberdeen have and all the extra elements he needed to be successful at Rangers, and all you're seeing somebody who's brilliant at both. I honestly think it's just, we've just found Ryan Jack again. That's what it feels like to me. And I actually think the one thing he's got over Ryan Jack is he's got a real burst of pace to get out to people. I'm just really impressed with him, to be honest.
I think as well we need to remember that he's only 21, so he's got plenty of growth still to come. And if we're impressed with him at this stage, then the sky's the limit, I guess, for us. And I guess that's probably why we're asked this question as well about should Rangers build the midfield around him, because he can be, and he seems to have the attributes to be a really key part of ours. John, I thought yesterday he was the one that really got the crowd into the game, actually. It was the first 5 minutes or so. He put a tackle in out the touchline. It was aggressive. It was fair. But he won the ball and kept it in play, and then reacted quickest to then take the ball and start an attack. And I think that just got everyone on board. There was a bit of the atmosphere was a bit weird yesterday at Hampden, especially at the start. I don't think it ever quite got going, but that was the one that got everyone right into the game and saying, right, here we go. I thought that was really impressive. We spoke about the aggression that he offers. What are the key things that you think he will give to this Rangers team?
It's the awareness. It's the awareness in transition. And I don't want to be criticised for just using buzzwords in football, right? But see that tackle you're talking about? He actually is in the inside left channel playing the pass into Lawrence 9 seconds before that. And he's over on the other side of the pitch because he's aware of where the ball could break and where Motherwell are going to play it when they break out. And that's something I think we've really missed. And it's something that I was always super critical of John Lundstrom over, as I didn't feel like John Lundstrom had a brain to sense out danger. Like, he had loads of good quality, but John Lundstrom would fly into tackles when the tackle was obvious. He'd be in people's faces when the press was obvious. But it always felt like to me that there was like a real missing of, when we're on the ball, players are like, we've got the ball, it's fine, we've got the ball, it's fine, we've got the ball, it's fine. I feel like Connor Barron moves around the pitch going, if we lose the ball now, where do I need to be? And I feel like that's something that we've properly missed since Ryan Jack's been injured. Since Ryan Jack's real injury problems during the title winning season became apparent. Glenn Kamara was another one that was really good at that. Just knew where to position. Stephen Davis was the best at it, but like, that's a whole different level. But that's what I like about Connor Barron, is he seems to always know where the play can break and where he should be to then counter press and get on it and win the ball back. And then there's that additional thing you just talked about, is he'll make mistakes. Kyiv game, should stay on his feet, little things like that. But when it's out on a touchline and somebody's about to go by you down the line, you can risk a bad tackle. You can risk taking somebody out, or you can risk missing the tackle because you should have 2 centre-halves behind you covering over. But it's that willingness to go and put in the tackle and just be that aware. So for me, it's the awareness in transition of losing the ball. He just seems to know where he needs to be all the time. And that just reeks of somebody to me that's pure hyper-intelligent when they're playing football. I think there's people who get away with football that are just so good at football, but he seems like somebody that's just really intelligent all the time.
What do you make of this comment from Luke Gibson? Luke Gibson 97 says, Barron is what I expected Raskin to be like. His attitude and work rate are top notch. Do you think it's fair to compare the two players, and would you agree with that comment, I guess?
I think they're very similar, to be honest. I think they're almost the same player. I just think we've recency bias. We forget how good Raskin was before like multiple injuries and not being in the team have hindered him. Like, Raskin looks like somebody that's totally regressed now because of injuries and not being able to get back in this team. I think they're very similar footballers.
Do you think that, I guess, given how Raskin's still young as well, but given how young Barron is as well, that Clement's probably looked at it and said, actually, we can rotate these two players. They're both high energy, they're both physical. There's always the risk of injuries when you play football at any level, and if you're playing in that style of play where you're trying to break up the play, you're going to get into a few tackles and stuff as well. Do you think that's the thinking of the manager and Niels Coppin in terms of how they're building out that part of the squad?
Yeah, and they're both young as well, which is just an extra addition. I think if Raskin can get over his injuries, you've actually got a good. See if we could get Raskin and Sterling fit for 70% of the games, along with Barron, Diomande, you've got like a good base 4 midfielders to choose from. And it wouldn't be my formation, but in the formation we seem to be willing to play with the 2 sitters. You've got loads of energy and loads of tackling a bit and loads of football ability in there. It just seems like that's what he wants. He wants real energy, real industry, and people that are willing to put themselves about. And I think that's definitely. I just think Raskin and Barron are very much the same player. I would love both of them to be available all the time, man.
Yeah, CJ says Raskin, Dio, Stellan and Barron is a nice little group of guys in the middle. To be honest, I have to agree with that. Barron started yesterday in a midfield 3 alongside Diomande and Lawrence. Do you think that's our strongest midfield 3? I guess first of all, and then secondly, what do you see as the sort of strengths and weaknesses of those 3 players? Because Tom Lawrence in particular has been in for quite a bit of criticism even at the start of this season.
Yes, I think in what Clement's clearly settled in doing, it's probably our best midfield 3. And what he wants to do, I don't think the 10 suits Diomande. I don't really think the 6 suits Diomande either. I think you'd need a different formation to really get the best out of him, but he gets an assist yesterday, he played really well. But when I rewatched the game this morning, and if you actually watch Diomande really closely, there's lots of him trying to organise, and I wouldn't say frustration is the right word, but you can see him a lot of the times getting a bit confused as to where Lawrence is meant to be, because Lawrence seems to be covering a lot of the lines of passes. Diomande is really good at moving away from Barron and creating maybe a 20-yard strong pass that needs to go into Diamande's feet, but then Diamande's behind the line of midfield. But but then Lawrence will sometimes come off of the defence and then stand in front of that pass, and you can see Diamande then kind of being like, well, I was making that room for me, like kind of thing, and giving his space to go forward. So I don't know if I particularly like that, and I feel like a lot of the close link-up play that Diamande was trying to do yesterday, again, Lawrence was then taking that space. So I don't know if that's just a teething problem, but that again would suggest to me that they're kind of left to their own devices a little bit and what they want, what they're allowed to do. It's not really like when you go here, he'll pull into this area. It's very much like get on the ball a little bit and do what you want. And that sometimes it looks like it can leave him a little bit flustered. But I think that's the three that we're going to see working, because Diamande and Barron are two that can get up and press aggressively and can get back in quick. Lawrence can't do that. I think we've seen an advert for the hour onwards that Diamande's not a 10.
Yeah,
for me.
I think it was interesting last week. I think it was after the Hearts game, and we may have spoken about it when we were on last Sunday as well, in terms of in the Hearts game, Barron and Diamande seemed to be rotating who was sitting and who was going. I felt very much yesterday against Motherwell, Barron was the designated sitter and Diamande was able to go up and down the pitch and move into those wide areas and support the likes of Černý. And I felt like that worked much better in that first 55 minutes.
It actually looked more like a 4-3-3, to be honest, like a natural 4-3-3 with 2 8s at times. But it was Lawrence's movement that made me look like Diamande was almost playing as an 8 and Lawrence was still playing as his 10, and they were all just, there wasn't really clear cohesion where one should be. And even at times you can move it around to be like a 4-1-4-1 almost, that Barron was just behind 4 midfielders. But it just didn't feel like that rotation in the front, the final third, was correct for those movements. It felt like there was a lot of nice stuff into the middle third between Diamande, Barron, Tavernier, Scott Wright and Černý kind of inverting and letting fullbacks go beyond. There was a lot of nice in there, but when it got into the final third, it seemed to really break down a bit too much for me. And I think that's what I was kind of getting at when I said that Diamande felt like a lot of his space was getting taken up by Lawrence, and potentially Lawrence felt the same. But yeah, I don't know if that's maybe what they've tried to do, but not maybe worked on it as well as it could have been. I mean, it looked to me in the Kyiv game that we had changed our press. It looked, and to be honest, against Motherwell again, it looked like it was more a 4-3-3 with Lawrence and Diamande being higher and the wingers going on centre halves. It looked like we had a more natural 4-3-3 press rather than the 4-2-3-1. And when we lose the ball, we drop into the 4-2-3-1. That was the bit that's maybe confusing players, because we won't have had many training sessions now that if we've decided to change that since we started the season.
Do you think that's down to personnel, or do you think that's down to, obviously one of the main criticisms that we've had throughout pre-season and in the early parts of this season is that our midfield gets taken out by one simple pass and the opposition are straight on to the defence? Do you think that's part of just a wee bit of a slight structural tweak to then try and overcome that fragility?
I don't know if I'm reading into it too much. Clement, after the final pre-season game, talked about how many deliberate extra kilometres they'd put in people's legs. The shambles that our press was in that 4-2-3-1 could have did that on purpose or could have did it by accident. And when we've got into competitive football, he's decided very quickly that we were going to be the 4-3-3 press, now that pre-season's been a certain way that he wanted it to be. Or it could just be an accident and I'm reading too much into it. But it feels to me that if you wanted to get Diamande, Barron, Lawrence, Dessers, wide men doing a lot of kilometres during pre-season friendlies, you would keep that ridiculous 4-4-2 press, have your midfielders having to cover an extra 1.52k a game, and then having them in good stead to play these games, because just judging on those, Diamande and Barron have been the ones that have been subbed off in all those games, and they're the ones that were really pushed through in pre-season. I would like to think that there's some method in that madness, just because Clement actually mentioned the amount of kilometres that those players put in pre-season. So maybe it's been deliberate the whole time that he's just went, let's just go 4-2-3-1 pre-season. Let's work in the press, but we know what our press is when we start playing competitive football. It's been 2.5 games where we've had that really aggressive 4-3-3 press. So it looks like that's changed to me. It's the wingers going out centre halves. It looks like it's deliberately changed as well. So I'm fingers crossed that it's been that, and it's pre-season's just been to get people running.
Yeah, I think I've been much more impressed by our press in the last few games. You can see it working. You can see the players going together instead of going as individuals as to what it looked like during the pre-season games. And I think that was where the real concern was, that it felt like almost Dessers and Lawrence were going and no one else was going with them. And sort of Scott Wright would go at points, and then Černý would go at points, but at points they would sit. Not Černý, sorry. Cortez would go at points, and at points they would sit as well. So I think that was the concern coming out of pre-season, but it definitely seems to have switched up. Thankfully, it seems to have switched up, and we seem to be much better on that front. You spoke about Tom Lawrence, and do you think that Tom Lawrence will still be will be the starting third player in that team alongside Barron and Diomande? I'm not Tom Lawrence's biggest fan. I think he's got a lot of quality around him. I think he fails to show it a lot of the time, and I think he's not really lived up to the expectation that I personally had when he came into the team. Why do you think he's going to be that starter for us?
I think there was I can't remember, probably one of our competitor podcasts that raised the stat at the end of last season about Clement's the rise under Clement and shooting from range for Rangers. Seen it with Černy's goal yesterday. Lawrence is one of those players that has that real capability. Diomande the same, Barron the same. We've seen that against Hearts. Don't know if anyone remembers his goal against St Mirren last season from 35 yards. Absolute screamer. I don't know if it's getting as many of those types of players in games, because he knows that Rangers will more often than not counter a low block. And the more players we can get that are in central areas that have the capability from 25 yards, that aren't afraid to take a shot, maybe Lawrence is just the lucky one that's got the extra bit of technique that Dujon Sterling doesn't have. So he doesn't want to bring him and move Diomande forward one. He's really got another 10 in there that's kind of naturally, if the ball breaks, if Dessers links up with him, there's somebody that will take that shot and maybe break that low block open. I'm assuming it's something to do with that.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see if he does. It'll be interesting to see if the likes of Cantwell or Hadji depart and we invest in someone else to come in and play that position as a bit of competition, or if that money goes elsewhere in the squad. We do seem to be in a bit of a one in, one out situation at the moment. That might change should we get past Dynamo Kyiv on Tuesday and we get an extra sort of £5 million or €5 million coming in to the pocket at that point. It'd be very nice if we managed to get into the Champions League and get those £43 million, but I'd also be very scared of seeing us play in the Champions League. So there's swings and roundabouts on that one. There's a question here from Tex Thompson that I just want to bring in. Rangers' problems stem from both fullbacks conceding possession through their poor choice of distribution. We lose possession and end up with constant pressure on the centre-backs. I think we obviously saw that from Ridvan during the week last week. We do occasionally see it in Premiership games, but probably not quite as often. Do you agree with that?
This is a problem. Maybe we're not knowing exactly what our rotations and setup definitely are, because it makes it really hard to judge who's at fault for certain things. But I do think we get really caught out in transition with fullbacks trying to bomb on at the wrong time when we've not got secure possession, or we try and play centrally when it should be using the fullback, and we get turned over where people are breaking on both our centre halves down the channels and it's counter attacking, and you're relying on a Connor Barron maybe to break it up. It does, or defenders doing their job 1v1, which, to be fair, see when you're at a level of us and you're playing Motherwell, your defenders should be comfortable being man for man and taking those risks. It wouldn't be how I'd want us to play. I would always want us to have a +1, +2, even when we're attacking. But yes, I do agree that we do see, but this has been a criticism that I've had for ages. We just see little letter centre halves just get pummeled from year to year. But maybe it is that level of confidence where Clement is looking at it going, you should be able to defend 1v1. Like if you're at Rangers, you need to be. Maybe that's why the likes of Pröpper have been bought, because they are comfortable doing that.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, I think it's always a risk when you play fullbacks that want to push forward, and people's obvious assumption is as soon as they lose the ball and they're out of position, well, why are they not quick enough to get back and be at right back? It's impossible a lot of the time for any human being, unless you're Usain Bolt, to try and cover the ground that's been expected of them at times. But yeah, fully agree. We kind of alluded to it earlier in the podcast, and I know it's been a lot of chat around Rangers' performance seemed to change when Černý went off, Lawrence went off at the same time. Everything seemed to kind of fall apart at that point. Diomande moved into the sort of number 10 role, which I'm not quite convinced is is the role he wants to play for us. But we did seem we lost a lot of the movement and creativity we had that we kind of had going in that first half. We lost control of the game. What happened for you? I think it just seemed to fall apart in front of our eyes within a couple of minutes, which is quite incredible. Is it purely down to the strength and depth? Is it just the players moving into some unfamiliar positions? What do you think it is?
But that is a little bit where the people that question Clement probably every turn get their kind of 2 cents in, and they're probably right as they go, why did it change so much? Like, it looked like we weren't even playing the same type of football. It looked like we didn't have any control of the game, and that shouldn't really happen with a well-coached team. Games can get away from you if the team against you are hyper quality and better than you. But when you're making like-for-like changes, don't get me wrong, changing a centre-half isn't ideal at any point. Like, your centre-halves very rarely are going. The only time a centre-half probably looks good coming on is when one centre-half's had an absolute howler. Balogun was only coming on because Pröpper had done as much as he could do in the time that he'd have. I don't even think like a lot of our play was going through Černý individually. I think a lot of it was to do with Diamondi being in the 6, moving up and down into the 8, because their midfielders then didn't really know whether they could go and press him, whether they could come forward, because even like Černy's ball through to Dessers early, Diamondi makes a really good movement to get him the space to play that pass. And it was just little things like that. If you take him out and have a Dujon Sterling who's breaking up play, you then don't have that, like, we'd say quality of movement into dangerous areas. Yeah. Dujon Sterling's all action and going to get about the pitch. He's not going to find the same pockets of space as a Diamondi finds.
Yeah, I think Dujon Sterling, we all know his qualities. We all know he can play in various positions across the pitch. And I think when he does come on, he always makes an impact because, like you say, he's an all-action footballer. He always puts in that crunching tackle. He's always really solid on the ball. But I think it's interesting how other players had to move about in the midfield to accommodate him yesterday, and I think that's maybe something people haven't necessarily considered from that perspective, and how that maybe impacts the likes of Diomande, or how that maybe impacts the likes of Barron. I think you've also got to point to the fact you've got Ross McCausland coming on off the bench, and is he really of the quality that we need in our first team? I'd say not. I'd say he's maybe second choice at a push, but probably third choice on that position if you have a good enough sort of squad build. In that case, he's definitely second choice at the moment because of who we've got available to us. But I think to me, he's not of the level to be even really getting consistent minutes in a Rangers jersey unless injuries kind of force that. What did you make of the fact Paul McGorrigle says, and it was something a lot of people pulled up, was it changed second half because Motherwell changed formation? Motherwell went 4-4-2, I believe, at one point and a half. I'm not quite sure exactly what point they did change to that, but it seemed to coincide with our defence going to pot. It seemed to coincide with when Leon Balogun came on. Is that, how much of a concern was that for you when Balogun came on? And for all that he's been pretty solid so far for us, yesterday just looked lost at sea.
Yeah, I do think putting the two up against us does help Motherwell's case, but I do think it's just a early season game. We made so many changes. We took off critical players. We put the wrong players in the wrong positions. Motherwell got a bit of a foothold, or at least looked a wee bit more in the game. I just think it was just a perfect storm of little bits here and there that contributed to it. I don't think it was specifically anything Motherwell massively did. I think it didn't help that we changed our centre-half, centre-mids, and took off the most promising player that we had in the pitch in Černý.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Back to the midfield, just a couple of final points. What did you make of Diomande when he got into that number 10 role? I think he seemed to struggle to get the service into him, but I don't know how much of that comes from, I guess, the difference in terms of McCausland was more going down the outside than Černý was, whereas Černý was coming inside and looking for that link-up play with the likes of Lawrence. What did you make of Diomande in that number 10 role?
Yeah, I didn't like it. I maybe if we see it with Černý still on the pitch, fully fit, if you see it with a natural left winger, Diamondi in at the 10 with Dessers in front, maybe it'll look better. But I just think you lose a lot from Diamondi kind of coming a bit from deeper and linking that play. I think it didn't seem too high, but I just didn't like it. There's a couple of times that Yilmaz tried to feed him the ball and he's breaking into the same runs he was doing in the first half. But from those runs, you had Lawrence coming off of the line of their defence into a 10 and Diamondi breaking into that. So they couldn't follow both, which is where he picked up a lot of the nice little balls that he was then combining with Tavernier and Černý. When you then tell him you're up that park, it's like, I just didn't like it. I think he's an out and out 8. We signed an 8. He played an 8. He is an 8. That's where his future's going to be, whether it's successful at Rangers or beyond. He's going to be an 8 in a 4-3-3. So we need to try and find a way that accommodates that and gets the best out of him, because right now I think we've got a bit of a gem that we don't quite know how to use. And it's if we use Celtic as the prime example, I think somebody mentioned Matt O'Reilly earlier, like right at the start of this podcast. If you put Matt O'Reilly in a 6 in a 4-2-3-1, you're not getting the numbers out of Matt O'Reilly. If you put Matt O'Reilly in the 10 in a 4-2-3-1, you're not getting the same numbers out of Matt O'Reilly. You're getting the numbers out of Matt O'Reilly because he's played in 2 good 4-3-3 formations where he's allowed to be in the 8, come deep if he wants, play higher if he needs, go out wide, underlapping runs and getting in critical areas. He's kind of allowed to do what he wants because he's got a good 6 behind him. That's where I see Diamondi being. Similar to if he was playing in Celtic's formation, he would be getting the same numbers for me as like a Hatate would, or kind of maybe bridging the Hatate to O'Reilly gap. And I think that's what we've got in a player, is that if we could get a good 6 and Barron and him as 8s, you'd probably see a higher amount of contributions, definitely, and you would see a lot more success from him.
I think that was going to be our next question. Was we were obviously early in the window, we were linked with Joan Jordan, we were linked with Hannibal Mesbury from Man United as well, who both kind of potentially sit in those areas. Do you think it's important that we do get a number 6 in to allow the rest of the midfield to flourish?
I think so. I really do, because right now, to me, what I think will happen is we'll go into that old firm and it will be Sterling, Barron and Diamondi in the 10. That'll be how he plays it, because he'll look at it and go, even if he thinks Diamondi isn't going to give him the same as what he can give him from a 6-8 area, he might look at it and go, but at least he'll have the energy to at least get around Callum McGregor. And if Callum McGregor breaks, he's got the energy to get back with Callum McGregor and just look at it from a simple physical standpoint. For me, I would be looking beyond that and just being like, I don't think Barron, just because if I look at the Kyiv, he's got too much to learn just now to play the 6. He's very much Ryan Jack, where he's kind of between the two, whereas I think he can. Because I think people forget until they've seen Ryan Jack's goodbye video how many like good goals from outside the box Ryan Jack also contributed as a Rangers player, and how many more he could have if he'd been fit for longer. I think that's what I see in Connor Barron as well. I see somebody that we've seen glimpses of in the Hearts game with a shot with his left foot. Connor Barron's somebody that could get you 5 to 10 goals a season if played in that 8 and allowed to get near the box. I'm absolutely convinced of that. And I know for a fact Diamondi would get you 10 plus goals if he was given a bit more license to get forward and less kind of concerned about being in that 4-2-3-1.
I think we saw that in Diamondi's first game for us, the strike that he had. So you can see the quality there, and he's not scared to have a shot either. They're probably a wee bit too far and few between at this moment in time, but hopefully something we see more of. John, just before we move on to, we'll kind of head to Tuesday in the Dynamo Kyiv game at Hampden. One thing that continues to frustrate me about us, and there are many things that continue to frustrate me about us, but one thing that continues to frustrate me is our 2 James Tavernier free kicks aside, our lack of quality from set pieces. Why do we struggle so much when we get so many of them?
Because we don't work on them. Mate, see, until, other than Clement saying he likes to do them, I want somebody to actually ask proper questions, because to me it's very clear, like crystal clear, that yes, we do analysis of the opponent's set play setup. Definitely. 100%, because I've seen it in the Hearts corners where we're going for that near post area. But what's also very clear from the types of movements that are happening is we do not do any work on the training ground with those corners. Not a single minute on the training ground is spent practicing timings of runs, deliveries, little things that I think I would do if it was my role to be in charge of that. Like even little things to I think it was open goal that we're talking about, the distances at Hearts you get to take a corner. And I was like, yeah, but I know for a fact, like listening to Aston Villa, that they went to stadiums like that. See, when they're doing their set play work, they measure out the corner area they're allowed to take corners from, so they know what kind of run-up they've got, so they know what types of players are better taking which corner, so they'll know if they use short corners more often. That level of detail in their practice and runs, I feel that we show people video and go, lads, we want to put a corner on top of the goalie at the near post. I want you four to attack it. And then those four just do that. That's it. There's no time in a run. There's no when you go. There's maybe a James Tavernier hand signal will be when the trigger goes. But it's very clear to me that it's not actually worked on the training ground at any length. Not 5, not 10 minutes, not 50 minutes. It's all theoretical and it's out on the pitch. I'm 100% convinced, I would put my house on it, that we do not do any work on the training ground.
To be honest, we're so bad at them that if we did put effort into them, then I'd be really concerned with the output that comes from it. Luke Gibson, 97, says, how many goals could that be lost by not working on set pieces? I don't know if there's figures out there, John, but I imagine that there's a decent, going by how many corners and free kicks we get in and around the danger area, there must be quite a high number.
So Arsenal, somebody came back at me. So Arsenal last year, the Premier League average in England is 4% of corners will result in a goal. That's the average. Arsenal last year were at 7.8%, so they were double the average. Everton were 11.9%. Those were the two most successful teams from that area. The highest Premier League average was West Brom under Tony Pulis at 13.9%. Tony Pulis told us on a CPD event that they did an hour a week on set plays, and you could tell that West Brom were like that. The only chance we've got to score in this Premier League is with corners. So there is definite proof that if you invest time, you get results and you get rewards. Rangers are like at 1.6%. So Rangers, I know it's not the Premier League. Somebody came back and said, how many corners are Arsenal taking against 11 men in the box? It turns out a lot, because they were scoring against Palace and West Ham, who had everyone back. Yeah. So it's not just as simple as saying, oh, it's against Man U, they maybe left 2 up the park and had people out the box. No, they're doing it against the similar setups. Everyone in the box, they're manipulating people, they're deliberately doing it. I think I said the Arsenal-Tottenham game, Arsenal beat Tottenham 3-0 at it ended up being 3-2, but it was 2 set play goals because Tottenham were the weakest. Arsenal had done loads of work. You're winning derbies, you're winning big derby matches because you're working on set plays. That to me, and I still see Celtic's weakness still as being corners. I still see it. And to me, it's negligent to not be like, that should be one of our biggest focuses when it's this important.
And I think when you say an hour a week, was like Tony Pulis said they worked on an hour a week, that seems nothing. It seems absolutely nothing for a professional football team to spend an hour a week taking set pieces and practicing how they're going to attack them.
Especially, obviously, when we're doing European football, there'll be less sessions. It'll be mainly around recovery and stuff like that. But when you think of recovery sessions are low intensity. That could be it. You could even be like, do you really want players taking corner after corner in a recovery session? Get a set play analyst in that takes corners and have them do the delivery. And then the players only have to do it when they're doing it, and they can work on whatever delivery they need to do. And it's more about the runs and the time of the runs, because I guarantee if you can get a set play coach that can deliver corners into an area, James Tavernier and Mo Diamondi or Yilmaz can do it as well. No bother. And maybe you could focus that recovery session on the runners to attack the corners and stuff. It seems a very simple problem to be solved with a 40 grand a year job. When you consider what we pay in players' wages, like the 2 weeks of somebody's wage, you could probably have a dedicated set play coach who would only be working on throw-ins, free kicks, falling against, corners, falling against, and that's it. And that's what they work on, and that's what they're designated to do. And even if you got, I think I'd said something like, if it was worth Rangers going from 1.6 to 4% of their corners being goals, it was an extra 9 goals a season. I think at the point we were in the run-in last season, when I looked at that, I was like, that's the goal difference between if we finished on points with level with Celtic, we would win the league. But then that's not even taking into context which games you get the 9 goals in. Yeah. You could get them in a game that you're losing and draw. You could get them in a game you draw and win. You get them in an Old Firm where you change it. It's literally that critical to me. And that's why you've seen, for God's sake, Man U signed a guy from the Norwegian top flight that was a manager of Lillestrøm as their set play coach. So he's left being a head coach in the top flight in Norway with Lillestrøm to now be Man United set play analyst, because he probably knows of the type of work that he's going to be getting to do day to day with an elite team and how important that role's becoming.
Yeah, absolutely. Stevie Scotty, 19 there, saying, do we even have a set-piece coach? Absolutely not. Ross Clark saying, I don't know how accurate these figures are, but last year we had 400-odd corners and scored 6 goals. That's quite incredibly bad, isn't it?
I don't think it's even 6, because that 6 includes one that John Suter scored that comes back out the box, goes back out with Tavernier, and Tavernier then whips it back in. So a corner is still a corner until it is cleared out the pitch, or until that team regains composed possession. That's until, so you can have all the, and that's, to be fair, that's fair, because first and second phase is very important when you're doing corners as well. And I would expect, if I was a set play coach and it was my corner, I'd be like, well, we still had that ball in a dangerous area because I've set the players up in this way, so that if it does come out, we're still ready to go again. But when you do, I think it was 380 or something we had in the league, and we scored 6 goals from.
Yeah, quite incredible, those numbers, and definitely an area for improvement. Right, last 10 minutes of the podcast, let's get on to looking ahead to Tuesday. All set up nicely for us, one each after the first leg away in Poland. Atmosphere looked quite different to what it'll be on Tuesday night, I'd imagine. But I think, John, it was me and you and Kieran that were on last Sunday talking about looking ahead to the first leg. We all had a bit of the fear, talking about Dynamo Kyiv scoring 9 goals against Partizan Belgrade across the 2 games. How good they're going to be. What did you make of Dynamo Kyiv last week? They were nowhere near as good as I thought they would be.
Nah, I wasn't impressed at all. To be honest, I think it's hard to tell. I don't know if them not playing between Partizan's second leg and us was actually an issue for them, because it's the time of the season that you're going through, especially after the Euros. You probably want to be getting that regularity right up. They looked like a team that hadn't played together for more than a week, to be honest. I was really, I wouldn't say I was shocked, but I was surprised at how laboured they looked and taking advantage of us. I think they'll be more dangerous on the break. That's my only concern, is that we see a different side to them against us. But from what I've seen, especially in the second half, I would be very annoyed if we don't go through, given that we've got out of that alive with a draw. I think, and I know it's at Hampden, I know it's not at Ibrox, but I still think we've got to be in a position where we look stronger as that game went on. I know he said at half-time they wanted to show them a couple of images because it felt like they hadn't been remembering what they'd prepared for. If that's all correct and it's not just like smoke and mirrors, we should be getting with a 90 knowing exactly who we're playing against and how we're going to line up against them and where we're going to force them and how we get them turned over. If we play the second half for 90 minutes, we go through. It's that simple. If we play the first 45, it could be a long night. It's that way where I'm just so caught between the two. But I just feel like the way that game ended, we were always the aggressor. And I think if we can start that with 49,000 Rangers fans, we should go through.
It'll be interesting as well, given what Cyril Dessers said in his post-match press conference. And I'm not sure how happy I am that he said it, or if he could have just kept it quiet. But he obviously said that as soon as he scored, he just saw a complete shift in the mentality and the body language of the Dynamo Kyiv players. Obviously, it's gotten to lose a last-minute goal, no matter where you are, especially if you think you're going to win a tie like that. But it'll be really interesting to see how they regroup. I know they hastily arranged a league game, or was it Friday night? I think they hastily arranged a league game, which was originally cancelled and then rescheduled and then put back on with just a day's notice. So that, like you say, that might have been what they thought was the issue, was that they didn't actually have any game time between the second leg against Partizan and the first leg against us. RFC 72 says, after watching Kyiv Belgrade in the first leg, I was disappointed in them. Don't know if Belgrade were that bad or they were just poor against us. There's every chance that they could have been just had an off night and weren't too great. And Jason Richardson says they struggled on the tight pitch, probably smaller than Tynecastle, which will be interesting considering they're going to Hampden, which is the most expansive pitch you could probably find. So it'll be interesting from that perspective as well. But the game was really open last week, John. It was end to end, kind of, especially in the first half. But second half we took a wee bit more control. But first half it was just end to end, particularly in the first 15-20 minutes. Are you expecting more of the same on Tuesday? I think we'll just take control of it, and that'll be how the flow of the game goes.
I think we'll really control it. I really do. I think everything kind of points towards a little bit of a shift. It's not fully there. Like, it feels like Rangers are always one defeat away for a catastrophe, but it feels like that Kyiv last minute goal, and although the Motherwell game kind of got away from us after the hour mark, it felt like that first half you seen like a team that were made actually a bit more confident. Dessers scoring again is just another thing that you just can always kind of fake it till you make it. Just keep pushing him on. You're going to have Hefty that comes back in to that team. As far as it's got to be him and Černý that start on the wide areas. It just has to be.
Yeah.
Lauren's got his rest, so you might actually see a bit more from him because he has been the one. He's just been getting pummeled constantly. Diamande and Barron have done their work, had the rest back in. Sterling's back available. I think you've actually just got a really, really good side available, and this is like a catalyst. I feel like that this moment in time is if we could beat Kyiv, that could be, even with the problems that I think we face in the next round if we get through, it could be a real catalyst for like the confidence kind of setting in on everyone and everyone kind of stepping up, because it's all well and good us like praising Connor Barron, but that, like, he hadn't won his first 2 games as a Rangers player, so that was his first win as a Rangers player, and it wasn't even massively convincing, although he was. So as kind of getting that new team with confidence and playing right and get everyone getting to know each other, it does take time, and I think this is one of those games where I think as long as we control it properly back in the team, I think it should be a game that we take control of and get by.
Yeah, we've seen many games before where, especially in the Scottish Premiership, where we're in full control, but we struggle to break teams down. We struggle to get that goal. Where are the areas you think Dynamo Kyiv can be got at, I guess, and where we can pinpoint some weaknesses to make that breakthrough?
On the edge of the box, see, although Černy's ball for Dessers' goal is the opposite of that, we still had like 3 players on the edge of the box that were available for that ball to be played in. I think they'll struggle to play through us now, because I think they looked a little bit lost when we adjusted our press in the second half. They didn't really know what to do. It felt like everything that they had banked on was potentially seeing us the way that we've played against Celtic, the way we played against Man U in pre-season, and that's what they kept trying to do. And then after that, I felt like they were just going long. So I think they might be a bit more direct at times with us. And if they get that wrong, they could get the free caught up at Park High. Then you're kind of looking at Tavernier and Yilmaz or Hefty and Černý in the wide areas, getting their fullbacks 1v1. That's where I think they'll struggle, because I think Hefty got the better of their right back quite a lot in that second half. Černý with a critical assist. But I do think not just crosses into that area. I think cutbacks and that around the edge of the box, they seem to really want to drop deep. And now that they've conceded the goal from a Černý cross into that area, I suspect anytime Černý checks back or Hefty gets the ball, is they'll be protecting that area closest to the goalie. And then you might have Barron, Diamande and Lawrence on that edge of the box picking up scraps. And it's actually something I've seen Diamande, maybe the ball broke to him 2 or 3 times in the edge of the box in the first half against Motherwell. I think that's an area that we see kind of those players backing up the play and making sure you're around there for when it drops. But yeah, I think that edge of the box is, for me, when we're breaking down the wide areas, I can see being critical when it's breaking, whether it's pulled back or whether it's a second ball. I would be looking at that.
Yeah, just a quick final question before I get your score prediction for Tuesday night. But you kind of touched on Černý kind of cutting back there. I always get concerned when that happens, that players become predictable and they become easier to defend against, because at every opportunity Černý tried to cut back on his left foot. Obviously, Arjen Robben was the best in the world, I think, because people knew he was going to do it and they still couldn't stop him. So there are ways around it. Obviously, I'm not saying Černy's that good, but is that a concern, do you think, if he starts to get doubled up on or whatever?
No, because if he gets doubled up on somebody else's spare, this is why people moved away from footballers that had exceptional ability and went to teams that knew how to play a system, because teams would double up, and if you didn't have a way of playing, that player would then be nullified, and so would your whole team. It's why the era like Brian Laudrup's dead, because you can't just have somebody because they'll just man mark or they'll just double up. You need to have that. If they want to try and double up in Černý, it's going to get popped into Diamonde and switched out to Yilmaz's side, and Hefty's going to be spare, and they're going to get crossed into the box. And that's what they actually did do when they tried to double up on Černý, or tried to stop Černý and Tavernier working down that side. I don't think it's a good... The thing that I would like is I actually quite like him cutting back, because it looked like Kyiv wanted to get the line up. Every time he cut back, they wanted to try and get the line up to stop the cross. But that's where Dessa's goal came from, because they were caught in two and he's coming from deep. I don't know. I think they'll, the way they play, nobody's going to double up now, because you're sacrificing your whole team. They're going to assume that they stop Černý getting the ball 1v1, stop Hefty getting the ball 1v1, and be able to play from there. But no, I actually think the higher the level of team we play, players like Černý probably get more chances of getting 1v1 in good areas. Because against Motherwell, it did at times look really congested and really problematic for him. And that's why he ended up dropping into areas like he did for the assist for Scott Wright. Well, sorry, he didn't score, so we didn't get an assist, but it should have been an assist for Scott Wright. No, I don't think that's a concern.
Yeah, no, that's good. It just finishes off, John. Give us your score prediction for Tuesday.
I think we'll win by 2 goals. I can't decide if it's a 2-0 or a 3-1, but I think we'll win by 2 goals. Obviously, every football game is different, and they could have made loads of adjustments between the 7 days. But for me, the team that finished that game looked like a team that were lost of ideas, didn't know what to do to break us down or what to do to stop us getting control of the game. Unless they have made massive adjustments, that was pretty much their full-strength side that we played against. Their defence is still their weakest area. I just think that we can get goals against them, and I don't know if I'd stop them scoring, so that's why I'm caught between 2-0 and 3-1.
Yeah, I'm going for 2-1. I'm not convinced we'll be able to stop them scoring either, but I also don't want to sit through extra time and potentially penalties. So I'm going for a 2-1 Rangers win in normal time. Right, I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, John, for joining us. That was a really enjoyable podcast. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening and for all your comments. It's great to bring as many of them as we can up on the screen and get you all involved. In terms of what's coming up for TII team, Ross and I will be at the game on Tuesday, so watch out for the immediate post-match reaction podcast and shortly after the final whistle. If you have enjoyed the podcast, please do drop a like on the video. It helps us massively. Also, please subscribe to the TII channel, whether it be on YouTube or where you get your audio podcast, Spotify, Apple Music, etc. It helps us massively and means you don't miss out on any of the good Rangers content that we're pushing out every single week, several times a week. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Until next time, goodbye.